All right, so thank you for joining me tonight. Guys, we have Penni Royston of Evilsizor and Associates. Now, you are the owner of
I am.
Evilsizor?
I am.
Well,
Yes.
well, thank you for joining us tonight. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. This is
My
great.
pleasure.
All right, so anybody that doesn't know, please tell them what Evilsizor and Associates does.
Well, we help new carriers get into the business. So we do all the paperwork between the carrier and the FMCSA and state agencies if there's any involved. Usually there's a few state permits involved. And we handle all that nitty gritty paperwork so you don't mess up on your application at the get go.
That's right. So, okay, so let's dive into that. Okay,
Yeah.
so, and
Okay.
what, yeah, I mean, it's a lot to dive into. You know what I do
Yes.
when I want to learn about a company, right? Best thing to do is go to the website and see what's going on. So let's do that. All right, I'm
Absolutely.
gonna pull up your website, and okay, so let me move this down. Got to get situated here. Now let's do this too. We're gonna pull these logos out of the way. Okay, so, um, when we go to Evilsizor, it's evilsizor.com. It comes
Hmm.
up as evilsizor.co,
Yeah, that's just technicalities.
right?
That's
Exactly. Okay, I know.
server issues.
And I point it out because that way it's not confusing, it's not a problem. It just
Right,
says that up at the top. Okay. All
right.
right.
Yeah,
So here we go. So we get to your website. Now you have a lot of information here.
I do.
Um, where should somebody start? They go to evilsizor.com. Just go ahead and scroll down,
Just scroll
right?
down a little bit. Right. You can search for any keyword, or if you're looking for authority, go ahead and scroll down and you can file for motor carrier or broker. We've got them split out in two different packages. Or if you've already done that, you need a BOC, just go to the left there and file a BOC.
Okay. Now, and by the way, I didn't know you had that search function. That's really cool. That's
Yeah, if you're just looking for something in particular, that helps.
That does help. Yeah, boy, all sites should have that. My site, I need that.
Come on,
I
let's get going.
I don't have a search. Yeah, that's really cool. All right, so let's settle a debate. What in the heck is BOC3? And by the way, I noticed you wrote a blog post that says, "What in the heck is BOC3?" Right?
Yeah, people think it's more than it is. I just had someone call today and thought I was their insurance agent, even, because it says blanket company on the licensing and insurance page. So I call it the most misunderstood form on the planet because, it's just BOC3. It's a list of agents that we've secured. We have an agreement with all these agents throughout all the states that if they should get sued, God forbid, it does happen occasionally, or they're in trouble with the USDOT, we get the paperwork and then we get to serve it on to you.
So that's the thing is this is a legal, it's kind of like a legal
Uh,
clarification, right?
yes.
Like because when, lawsuits aren't something we want to think about.
No,
And
but they happen.
they do have, especially in an industry like trucking where there's so much at stake, right? I would imagine any
Uh,
forms of logistics, whether it's rail, air, by ship, you've
sure.
got, you've got people and you've got
Uh,
thousands of dollars, millions of dollars of cargo, and those
sure.
medical bills, that auto liability,
Yeah.
right? So, we're talking when it gets catastrophic, there's a lawsuit.
Just like that wreck on I-70 here in Denver just a few weeks ago. The guy came down out of the mountain and there was already a wreck at I-70 and he just kind of closed his eyes and went right through and killed four people and injured. There's 40 counts of vehicular homicide. And guess who is the process server on that case?
Evilsizor and Associates?
Yeah, we're going
Wow.
to see all of those documents. I mean, it's terrifying me to see what's going to come in.
Wow. Now, okay, that's
Yeah.
really interesting. So,
Yeah.
what does that, okay, so explain to us, what does that mean? You're the process server.
So all the plaintiffs' attorneys, if they can choose to go through us, or they can just go direct. But sure, they're going to probably go through us just to have that accountability. So they're going to send out their summons to one of our agents, probably me here in Colorado, or Brenda down in Texas, since that's where they're based. And then we serve the paperwork back to this company. And then it's up to them to hire a lawyer and get some legal advice on how to handle this, because it's not going to be pretty.
So this is interesting in that you're not a legal organization. Are you? You're
Mm-mm.
not. So you're
No,
not
we
an
don't have to
attorney at
be.
law. You're not a legal organization, but
Correct.
you're kind of like a mailbox for the.
Kind of. Yeah, that's a good description.
That's really
We're the
interesting.
messenger.
You
Don't
are.
shoot the messenger.
And yet, yeah, you have no stake in the
No,
lawsuit. You
no,
don't give legal advice.
no.
And the reason for this is now the BOC-3, this is a legal requirement by the FMCSA, right?
Yes, it is. And it has been from day one,
Okay. And when you say day one, like
like 1980-ish.
1980, okay.
Dad could
I was going to
probably
go way
verify
back. I
that,
was like, I was
but
kind of freaking out. I'm
it
like,
could
oh my
be
God.
before then.
Is that
Dad was up
800
before then.
BC? Yeah, I don't know.
He's like, yeah, he's
Right.
doing this.
Right.
So yeah, it was
Rex,
before then.
that's what's cool. Rex knows, and we're going to talk more about that. Okay, so this is wild. I didn't even know. We didn't talk about this, but you have got my attention. I mean,
Okay.
because how many companies can say they're in the middle of a major news slash legal?
Yeah,
I mean, this is
terrifying.
think of how many people know about this case.
Oh, I was at the bank today and the guy asked me what I did for a living. So I told him and he goes, so do you know anything about the I-70 crash? And I was like, yeah, I'm the process server. I get to see all those paperwork, all that paperwork.
So so any plaintiff's attorney on be representing anybody who was injured
Right.
critically or anything, because if you
Anything. Yeah.
suffered any damage, gosh, how many people? That could
Oh,
be a couple hundred people.
and probably
And
the city of
businesses?
Lakewood. The city of Lakewood
Oh my
owns
gosh.
2 miles of I-70, and those 2 miles, this wreck was in those 2 miles. So probably the city of Lakewood and the county of Jefferson County, and maybe even Colorado might sue. I don't know. Well, it remains to be seen. We'll just have to see.
And since we're curious, and because I know some people are curious, I'm curious too. Is that we're not going to get into semantics, but this driver worked for a trucking company,
Out of Houston.
right? He was not an independent owner operator, but he was a
No.
driver for a company, and
Right.
therefore, when the lawsuits come in from
Yeah.
folks that have been damaged, they're going to serve not only the driver,
Right.
right? But
But the
also the
company.
trucking company,
Right.
right? And then are there other folks they can name in that process?
Probably the insurance company.
And then
Part of that.
am I understanding that there are breaks at issue here? Is there a break
Uh,
issue
There was a brake issue. There's footage from someone's dash cam that as he was coming
I
down the
saw that.
mountain, he missed like the last turn
Oh,
off, so he could go right into the sand.
oh
And I
no.
mean, the kid was 23 years old. He's a young kid. I just don't, I can't imagine he had enough experience to be in the mountains driving like that. So it
Wow.
sounds like, I mean, I don't know. It's just what I'm speculating. It sounds like he was scared, because he did say he closed his eyes once he got down the mountain and around that corner. That's a pretty tricky curve right there. I'm surprised he didn't dump
I was
over.
going to say, it's
Oh,
amazing he
it's just
navigated the
horrible.
turn.
Yeah. And there was already an accident. It probably would have been fine. He would have slowed down if there wasn't an accident already there near Colorado Mills Mall.
It's too bad he made that turn in a way I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I mean, what? This
Oh,
is wow, what an intersection of craziness.
yeah.
Because he had the ability to get down the mountain, which, I mean, that
Yeah.
sounds pretty
And that, I
impressive.
mean, I go down that all the time.
I don't
It's
want to
pretty
do that
steep,
in a
you
truck, in a
know?
runaway truck. Forget
No,
it. And you know
no,
what? It'd be hard to make one of those ramps to have that'd be tough. Could be tough. I
yeah.
don't know.
And I just my thoughts. I mean, I could be totally off base, but since he's only 23, I just can't imagine he had enough experience to drive that truck down the mountain safely. especially with the
Right.
trucks,
Maybe it
the
was just
brakes going out.
beyond his wheelhouse. And I'll tell you, I like talking about this too, because I didn't know, you wonder about the motives. We hear so many terrible stories.
Yeah.
I mean, so there you are, man. You are in the middle of all this, being the process server, and wow. I mean, it's going to be a lot of paperwork. So,
It is. We haven't seen anything
wow.
coming yet.
Right.
Sometimes it can take a
It
while.
does take a while.
It
I
could take
think
2 years.
that's what I was going to say. I think most lawsuits take about 2 years
Yeah.
because you got to get the depositions. First, you got to do the discovery. Then you
Right.
got to get the experts. Then you do the depositions, and you got to get that. I mean, it's all the legal documents that
Yeah.
result from just.
Oh, I imagine they'll be like this.
It'll be and ultimately the trucking company getting sued. They will need a room in their business to store all of the documents.
I mean, sadly, they're done. The federal motor carriers already shut them down.
Yeah.
It's,
Man, that
I mean,
is
the whole thing is
hardcore.
just it's tragic and it's really sad.
It
I
is
feel
sad.
sorry for everyone,
I do
the
too.
victims and the company. They didn't mean for that to happen. No
No.
one wants that to happen.
No, and that is not the kind of thing you can predict. Wow, it's really interesting because that's, we are. I mean, here we're talking to not only car haulers, but there are trucking companies, and not only owner operators, but fleets.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. Makes this right now. This is, and we're going to talk to Diane in the live panel. She's going to probably have something to say about what can you do to minimize this level of exposure. I mean, it's so big. I don't know. This is
Make
a tough
sure
one.
your DQ files are in order and
Right.
train your drivers.
Right.
Especially,
And that's it.
the mountains here are dangerous to drive in. I don't even like coming out of that Eisenhower Tunnel going towards Breckenridge in a car, let alone a truck. And there is a runaway ramp right at the base of that hill, mountainside, and someone went up it the other day. Well, it's the day after that horrific crash in Lakewood. And you have to really be experienced and seasoned and know what you're doing when you're driving in the mountains.
Well, and in general, you make me think of, I've heard that driver recruitment is looking younger. You've seen the headline that they're, what? Now you don't have to be 21? Did they pass that law?
I'm not sure.
But they were working on it. Like, as long as you're 18,
Yeah,
they'll teach you
that's too young.
how to drive a moving sledgehammer.
I mean,
oh my
that's my
gosh.
opinion. My opinion, that's too young. These trucks are bullets.
Yeah, go work at Wendy's.
Yeah, get some
Right?
experience. Work in the trucking company. Work up.
Honestly,
do local drives.
This is why I've never driven. I've driven cube trucks and like 5 tons and stuff like that. But I mean, this level of machine is a huge responsibility.
Yeah,
That's
big.
why the FMCSA requires the BOC-3 be on file.
It's all about safety.
Right? So you've got, it's not just filing for your motor carrier authority, filing for your broker authority. Now we've really talked about BOC-3. I mean, that's got to be the most BOC-3 to ever hit live YouTube.
Yeah, and this office too. I mean, we'll see somebody get served 4 or 5 times in the year, but nothing like 40 counts of vehicular homicide. This is just going to be incredible.
And have you ever, your office has never handled a case that big? Been the process server.
And we have big companies.
I know, I was going to say, you've been in business 20 years.
30.
30 years. It's 30 now? I got to go update all the blogs now.
Next year is 30.
I was gonna say, so I was looking at your webpage and I saw, I'm doing the math, I'm thinking, it's got to be like 29. Yeah.
It is, exactly. This is 29. We started in 1990 when my daughter Andrea was born, and now she helps me run the company.
Wow.
29.
I love a good family business more and more.
Yeah. That's what we are.
I hope to do that later as well, as I expand, and that's really, really neat. I mean, because trucking is a family industry, so
it is. That's how this nation was founded, on mom and pop shops.
And there's just like the dream of owning your own business and being an entrepreneur. Yeah. You help folks achieve that dream in a way. I mean, if you want to
Yeah.
start up a trucking business, let's go
Yeah.
back to the website for a second because
Okay.
I talked more about BOC3 than I did anything else. So let's go back to that.
It's
It's just
okay. Maybe people
BOC3.
will understand now.
I love a good anagram, right? Everybody, I just love a good anagram. All
It's
right,
more than just filing a form.
it's very
Yeah,
serious,
it
and
really is.
so it's only $39,
Right.
and you just file it once.
You file it once and it stays active as long as the authority is active. If the authority goes inactive or you have a name change or you transfer the authority, then you have to file it again.
Okay,
There are some
okay.
companies out there that charge annual fees. We've just chosen not to because the federal motor carrier does not require us to do anything on an annual basis. So we
Well,
don't charge for something we're not doing.
I saw that somewhere you had that listed that beware of other companies that, and
Yeah.
we all see that. We all get we get some kind of marketing mail. I've gotten it for my domain that a company will help me renew my domain, but it's not even the .com. It's like .yaza. Well,
Yeah.
I don't need
Yeah.
.yaza much. So yeah, so you got to watch out for that. And I mean, I appreciate that too. We like to point out what we're not doing to get more business.
And we do charge, when you get served, we do charge a $150 fee because we're out fees with these attorneys. A lot of our agents in different states are attorneys. So they charge us to serve these papers.
Oh, I'm
And then we
sure.
have, postage. And so, that's just something that the carrier has to absorb.
And that's understandable. The form is $39, but if you
Right.
find yourself in a legal situation, there are going to be more legal fees.
Yeah.
And 125 is nothing compared to what the attorney charges.
Yeah, yeah. We have some really good attorneys and agents out there. Some don't, some do it out of the goodness of their heart. And boy, we really appreciate that. And then we
I
have
bet.
others that do charge, likely so because
Well,
they're in business to make money too.
that's
So
right.
I respect that. But we just put everything in there in that terms of service so you can just kind of understand. It's like we're not trying to get you. The $150 doesn't go in our pocket. It helps, serve all this paperwork. It takes time. I've got a gal here, Tamara. She handles all of our summons, and it takes time out of her day, and it takes, postage, and working with the agents that receive the documentation. Then we get a bill from them, and so and so I just charge that $150, and that's for the entire year. That's not an annual fee. That's just so to help absorb the cost of all the paperwork and stuff that we're serving to these clients.
Well, I was just going to say, when you talk about managing paperwork, making sure paperwork is completely filled out, I mean, you got to be very organized,
We
right?
are. Yeah.
Detail oriented. It's no joke. When you go, that's why I tell like dispatchers, I've talked with dispatchers like, yeah, I'll just do the paperwork. I'm like, man, I don't know. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Just look for the cars. Because if you are putting your neck on the line, that you got all the details and everything's accurate,
Right.
you better get money for that. That's a lot of work
It is. It
and a
is.
huge responsibility.
And there's some people they get upset. They're like, "Well, why do I have to pay?" And it's like, we just helped you with a lot of paperwork on our end. This is not. I wasn't the one that got in trouble. You're the
and
one getting sued.
and unfortunately, whether it's tax related or business related, forms related, there are. It seems like every time you do a form, there's another form and another form, and you got all these forms. You got to do them in the right order. They got to
Right.
be accurate. They have to be timely. And
Yeah.
once it's filled out, you need to file it somewhere so you can find it again. Or put
Right.
it in the right folder. I'll bet you have incredible directories and folders and subdirectories,
We
right?
do.
You're
Yes.
disciplined.
We
Yeah.
we have a campaign that we run out of our CRM with tasks and follow-up tasks, to make sure that it was filed. We email it, we'll fax it, we'll mail it, and we'll send it tracked mail. I've learned in the last 30 years that you track everything.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Especially when it comes to process serving,
Yeah,
and then keeping track of the tracking. You've got to track the tracking,
we do. Yes.
right? And then and then here's another one. You go back to in car hauling. If somebody says, "What's the status?"
Yeah,
They're
you
not
got to
kidding.
know.
You have to know, like
Yeah.
now. And if you don't have the status, boy, oh boy,
And
there's
we
a
have that. I had someone call the other day, or he sent me an email asking about certain carriers, and I had to look up all my information to prove that whatever he thought we did or didn't do was not accurate. So, I'm constantly, having to prove everything, and that's why we track, we timestamp, we keep copies. That's a lot of work in the background that people don't see, but that protects our carriers and us in the long
yeah.
run.
And not only we'll just keep drawing this out because it's a big picture, and I like
Yes.
people to appreciate the big picture. Is
Yeah.
that not only do you have on the front end your customers and the depth there, but then on the
Right.
back end all the agencies that are hitting you for information
Yeah.
and checking on you. I'm sure you probably interact with all kinds of companies.
Oh, so many different kinds. Insurance agents,
That's
attorneys,
right.
carriers, brokers, you name it.
That's why so many people know your name.
Yeah, we've been
Yeah.
around a long time.
Yeah. That is
29
awesome.
years. I was
29 years.
12 when I started.
Wow. See, and you can't do that now. You can't start when you're 12. They come
Yeah,
down,
no,
there's a
I
then
couldn't then
you
either.
have to file a form for that. I want to show I want to do some of this is that we're going to show on your website, you've got
Mhm.
other areas where you can learn. And I'll tell you what, so let's just look at this. New authority services.
Yeah,
You got a great website too. It's easy, but there's a
thank you.
lot of information here.
Yeah,
And then you've got other areas relating to the federal versus the state, and then
mhm.
this free downloads part. I like this a
Yeah,
lot. You click on free downloads, and you can get free information. These are PDFs, right?
right.
And these PDFs, I mean, there's a lot of information here. I know I wrote the 20 steps to car hauling, and it's a blog post, gets a lot of hits, and I spent a lot of time on that. But I like how yours is even more concise. And you know what I really like too is this let's go to okay, so you've got these timelines you created.
I'm a visual person.
Me too. These are
So that's
great.
why I've created a lot of this. It's just to make it simple because it can get complicated really fast. Too many agencies have their hands in the pot and people just don't understand. So throughout my experience in the last 30 years, I've compiled and created all of these, this timeline and the checklist just to make things simple.
And so let's see. So this is the carrier application timeline, right?
Yes,
Okay. So what we're doing here is okay. So day one, file your BOC-3 and file your MC Authority application.
right.
Day two,
That's
file your UCR. Oops.
And that's just a recommendation just to get it out of the way.
Okay.
It'll take a day or two before your DOT number will land in the UCR database, but right in there, just get it done out of the gate. That way you don't forget about it.
And anybody listening that if they don't know what UCR is, can you expand on what UCR is?
UCR is a permit that you have to file with the state. If you've been around a long time in trucking, it began as a bingo card. Now I'm dating myself.
Bingo card.
It was a bingo card. It looked like a card. I have some in my basement somewhere.
Wow.
And you would have to write down, either get a sticker for certain states, or Missouri would give you a number. I still remember all this crazy stuff. And then it morphed into single state registration, where you
Cab
would have to
cards.
pay per truck per state. So I
Yeah.
remember Texas based, if you wanted to run all 50 state or all 48 states, then it was like $210.95. So I still remember that fee for some
Wow.
reason. And
Right.
now it's funny when people complain because now it's much cheaper because it's just a blanket. And it's like, oh man, you don't even know what it was back in the 90s. It was expensive.
Well, I was gonna say when I started dispatching, there were cab cards. Now that was
That's different.
okay. That's different.
Yeah,
So
that's tied to the license
you
plates.
know what's great, and so that's the thing. This gets back into the complexity of getting set up because when
Yes,
you go
that's
through the list, there's a lot here.
right.
Let's go back to that list. I want to take a look at that.
Okay.
All
Yeah.
right.
Oh, and you
So
know what the purpose of UCR is now?
no,
You get to pay money to train these DOT agents.
really.
That's what they use the money for.
That feels good.
Before, it was just getting your authority on file with the state. Well, now they're using that money to train DOT agents, which I guess is a good thing, but it's kind of ironic that you're training them.
At the Auto Haulers Association of America meeting, I got to meet some folks that are, DOT authority, training, guideline advisors. Talking to them was really actually helpful and informative. I think that and I've seen also on Facebook in the Indiana State Police, Brent Hoover, he would interact on Facebook. I think in general, it'd be great to have more interaction with DOT officers.
Yeah,
If they could if the powers that be would allow that to happen more like in a live situation, I think that would help us all. Because when you say, just as you just pointed out, the DOT officers, I was already getting kind of tense. You know?
yeah, yeah.
It's pretty
And
intense.
I've reached out to the Colorado DOT for things like that, and the government really doesn't like to interact with us
I know.
on a private basis, which, I guess it shows favoritism. I don't know. But I think it could really be helpful if we could all talk, you just have a discussion, not try to convince somebody, but just a discussion.
Well, and I think, like, honestly, as I was telling them, I don't do like a call in show. People can live chat, but
Sure.
nobody's going to get like, this isn't going to be a dog pile situation. This isn't a gotcha show, So if we could assure that, you're not going to have to, and if you don't want to answer, just say no comment. I don't know. That works in other
Right.
places, and
Right.
sometimes you can't answer. But
Right.
it would be great to have more of an interaction with DOT on a regular basis rather than just, DOT blitz announcements. Those are
Right.
scary. In fact, we
Okay.
got another one coming up. Don't drive June 4th through 7th or something like that. I mean,
Oh,
you
is that
can,
one of,
but
yeah.
they're announcing when it is and they're announcing what they're looking for. And there's, or how about this on Facebook when I see somebody post, watch the Savannah scales. They're working hard.
Ha ha. Yeah.
Oh man.
At least the information's out there and you've been warned.
That way the guy that says go around isn't like, dog piled. So
Right.
he's just saying they're working hard. So
Yeah.
all right. So this is a carrier application timeline. Let's look at, you've got another one here. Here's a broker application timeline.
Yeah, it's a little different because they don't have safety compliance issues to put in place. It's pretty much just get your account set up, file your BOC. They still have to file their UCR. It's just like trucking, file your bond or insurance 2 weeks later. And then about it's approximately day 22. Don't hold me to that on the day because it depends on when everything is filed. Then the authority is granted and you're ready to operate. But you cannot operate before the federal government activates your authority. It's just not possible.
And I've seen that question before. And in
Oh,
fact,
yeah.
I think some people book loads before they have their authority.
Yeah,
Now,
that's not cool.
why brokers check. That's why, like, on Central Dispatch, you have to have your MC Authority certificate. If you don't be booking loads.
Right. And you can look on Safer and see if they're active too, which I highly recommend. Take a look.
But I've definitely booked loads without anybody checking any of our docs. And they were, just going by the fact that I sound trustworthy.
That's scary. You should not do that.
do not just go with Jay sounding trustworthy. That's what you're saying?
look it up, all the
That
information is public information.
is great.
Wow,
Um,
that's scary.
this is great. So, okay, so let's do this. I also want to say, because I know we have a few more minutes, and then we're going to come back with Rex. But before I leave that, some of the other, here's what I got to do. I said the question of the day that we would answer. Control L. Here we go. I just learned we were talking about Adobe Reader. So if you're in Adobe Reader and you hit Control L, it does a full screen view. Pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah. So okay, there we go. So let's get rid of common mistakes when applying for your interstate authority. What are the 6 common mistakes? All right, here's the delivery because I made the promise. Number 1. Business name and type of entity not properly set up with your state.
Yeah, so many people just tack LLC on the end of their name and don't even file it with the state.
Oh, wow.
No, you can't do that. You have to file it with the Secretary of State.
Right.
Or and service.
And what's cool is you point out the mistake and then you say, you go to LegalZoom, right?
Yeah. If you don't know how to do it, I use LegalZoom. I'm not afraid to say that I did.
Yeah. I used my accountant. I went through my accountant because I got to spend the time, but I know LegalZoom is a great site.
It is. If you need help, they're there. That's great.
Cool. That's cool. All right, number 2, using a personal social security number instead of an EIN. You see that all the time, don't you?
Don't do that because that information goes everywhere. It really does. It is not sacred. It doesn't stay in the confines of the government. It is everywhere.
And I'll tell you this, I like this. Here's a plus for Central Dispatch. If you upload a W-9 with your social, they won't use it because they're not going to publish that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, don't use your social. Number 3, unable to secure proper insurance in a timely manner. Causing the FMCSA to dismiss the application. Yeah, you've got to have insurance.
I mean, yeah, that's the whole piece to this whole puzzle. That's the most important piece to the puzzle is insurance.
As many people will tell you, which is why when shopping for insurance, well, that's a whole nother show.
Exactly.
That is. Okay. All right. Number 4, not knowing the steps it takes before you're legal to operate across state lines. Tell me more about this because Yeah,
that's where my checklist comes into place. A lot of times they get their authority and they're like, okay, I'm ready to go, not doing their homework, not getting their DQ file in place, not getting their ELD, just not getting everything in place safety-wise. They just go, it's like, oh, I have this authority, now I can go. And then they get stopped at the port of entry and then they're just like puzzled. And it's like, no. You've got to know what it takes. And there's so many pieces. One does not override the other. You got to have all of them. All of the agencies are in the pot.
You just mentioned a term, and in case, folks, somebody listening doesn't know what a port of entry is, you're not talking about the port at the ocean. Right?
No, we're talking going state to state on that state line.
That's right. So when you cross a state line, you're entering another legal entity.
That's right. And they have their own set of rules.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, we might be kind of one federally, but we are not one state-wise.
As anyone knows, when you dive into state versus legal on any topic, there can be an overlap, but it certainly isn't the same most of the time. So, so you've got to check what states you're going to go into before you go into them, which I think, if it wasn't hard enough, I think that adds more further complication and need for sound advice, right? Because we think we could just drive. I know. Actually, we can because we're just people. But if you're it's when you have motor carrier authority,
commercial,
and this gets into and this gets into the interstate commerce, right?
Yeah, sure does.
Okay, and this is a legal issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, number 5, forgetting to file the required forms to activate the authority.
Yeah, that happens.
So what are those? It says here there are 2 filings that must be made before the FMCSA will grant your authority: the BOC-3
Yeah.
and liability insurance or a surety bond. So
Right.
liability insurance for the carrier, surety bond for the broker, which again it gets into proper insurance.
Correct.
Okay, so and I mean it's as simple as that, but really this gets into the big one, the number three, insurance.
Oh, big. Yeah.
Okay,
You can't live without insurance.
so you could, in fact, do you ever see someone make the mistake they have insurance but they didn't file the form?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. And so we try to work with the insurance agent. It's like, please, you have to file this electronically. Don't send me a copy. I don't want it. You have to work with the government and get that filed electronically.
Okay, all right. That's really good information. I mean, because right, that can have somebody out there. Maybe somebody out there did that.
Yeah.
Entering the states without the proper credentials. All right, what kind of credentials we talk? Wow, there's a whole list. Oh
Yeah,
no.
there are. I mean, UCR, that should be done day 2 or 3. IFTA, if your truck is over 26,000 pounds, gross vehicle weight, then you need to apply for IFTA as well as your IRP tags. If you go through Kentucky, New Mexico, New York, or Oregon, they have an additional layer of tax. It doesn't replace IFTA, but it's in addition to. So you don't want to go see Aunt Martha that weekend, just traveling your truck around, get to where you're going and get out because you're paying per mile. And it can be anywhere from 4 cents to 16 cents a mile, depending on what state you're traveling through. Oregon's expensive. If you're not going through Oregon, don't get it.
I have heard that about Oregon. Oregon always comes up. You hear Kentucky, New Mexico, and Oregon a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, I mean they're pretty. Oregon, we don't do a whole lot of work with, but Kentucky, that you got I-75 and I-71 going up and down,
Yeah.
so
Oh
you
yeah.
avoid it. New Mexico, I-40, I-10 goes through there, so you have to
Right.
pay a mileage tax. And then New York has that bumper sticker, the hut sticker, and you pay, going through New York, but you don't have to pay for toll miles, just non-toll miles going through New York. So make sure here's a little pro tip, make sure your ELD splits out toll miles versus non-toll so you're not paying too much for New York HUT.
Make sure your ELD splits out toll miles versus non-toll miles.
Yeah, I have been
Wow.
begging companies out there to do that. And they
Wow.
kind of look at me cross-eyed a little bit. I'm like, no, I'm serious. This is a thing.
Wow, that's really interesting. I've never heard anyone mention that before, so I'll
Mhm.
try to put that in the Rolodex and see if I
Yeah,
can find some relevance for it one day because that is so specific. And are you
yeah,
talking about just New York because of that
yes,
sticker?
right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about parameters.
So that's a
Man.
whole nother show talking about fuel tax.
Right now there's a coder working on the app for the LD and he just freaked out. It's like, "Oh
Yeah,
my god,
yeah.
no
I mean,
way.
it's
I just
okay.
wrote that code."
Save these people some money, please.